The dream world and reality collide. Saturn and Neptune have already met up in the sky, but their true conjunction actually happens next spring. Is this really the do or die that's going to bring about the age of Aquarius? Let's get into it. So Neptune and Saturn, they really don't have a lot in common, these two. Neptune is really about sort of this dreamy, ethereal world. And Saturn is about this is reality. This is what we need to do. This is where we cut the chaff. So these two together are really interesting to see. I think it's especially interesting that their true conjunction, which actually doesn't happen until next February, is at 0 degrees of Aries. This is very important because Aries is the first sign in the zodiac wheel, and we have it at literally 0 degrees. So this is a very major transit that's going to be felt across the world. Every single country is going to feel this transit. This is a global effect for sure. It really characterizes a time period. We'll go through some dates throughout this video, but or recording if you're listening to this on the podcast. But I really think this is going to characterize a time period from like now, like 2025, into even like 2030. And I think we'll really start to see the full effects even around like 2030. I think it won't really take until 2030 for everybody to fully accept what is happening. Because what is happening here? Well, one of the main things that these two mean together is actually the takedown of certain leaders and certain governments. If we take a look at the last time that these actually came in conjunction with each other, the last time they were conjunct together at all was in Capricorn, and that was during the fall of the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall. I believe Nelson Mandela was released as well, probably during that time. The last time they were conjunct in Aries was a long time ago, like 1703, I believe, which was the Spanish War of Succession. Now, I had to tab Jonathan for his history buff nature to learn about the Spanish War of Succession, but ultimately, this is when Spain's power really dwindled because they were a world power at this time. However, their military had really dwindled to this at this time, yet they weren't saying that. They were presenting it like it was different than it really was. But when they went into war during the Spanish War of Secession, it became very obvious that their fleet wasn't as good as it was previously thought. And once that was revealed, it was kind of fair game for a lot of other countries and places to get back some type of power. And so I think that we are going to definitely see that during this time period. And when I say time period, I think it's important to note that like what time period do I really mean? Because I noticed that a lot of astrologers are talking about this aspect now, and I understand why, because they both did enter Aries recently. However, I noticed that a lot of newer astrologers really make the mistake of thinking that the main events are going to happen when they first enter. They actually already entered, by the way. One entered in March and the other in May. So they've actually already been in play for a couple of months there together. We will start to see events for sure right now that are, think of them like almost like a preview or an appetizer to what's really going to take off and go down next spring. This doesn't bode very well in conjunction with the fact that Uranus is also shifting signs. It's going to be shifting signs into Gemini on July 7th. However, much like the Neptune and Saturn conjunction, Uranus is also going to retrograde out and then back into Gemini. The last time that Uranus was in Gemini, one of the last times that Uranus was in Gemini was during World War II, and that's when the United States did go to war. But interestingly, it's very interesting to note that actually the first time when it first went in was right before Pearl Harbor. So the US was actually not in the war the first time when Uranus first entered Gemini, right? For you history buffs out there, you may already know that the US wasn't in World War II for quite some time, right? It wasn't until after Pearl Harbor that they entered the war. However, before Pearl Harbor happened, they did do an oil embargo on Japan. And I find that really interesting. So the first time, let's map this out, right? Like the first time Uranus goes into Gemini, which is August 1941 to October 1941. This is when the US put an oil embargo on Japan. And then in response to that December, Pearl Harbor happened. And then the US decided, I'm going to go to war. Yes, they did say that, but the first attack the first actual like direct conflict between the US and the Japanese fleet wasn't until the Battle of Midway, which was June of 1942. And you guessed it, June of 1942 is when that Uranus actually re-entered Gemini. So it's not likely that this main conflict, and I do think there's going to be a very obvious conflict going on, to be honest with you, coming up, isn't probably going to be completely clear or a fully manifested until next spring. However, we are going to start to see the beginning of that. And I think we're already seeing that with what's going on in Iran and things like that. This is stuff that I've been reporting on for quite some time, but I do think we're going to see a takeoff actually more so next spring. So it's important also to say, right, that Neptune and Saturn together really dissolves structures and shatters idealizations. So together they can be like a reality check, really. This does not fall well into the US chart, by the way. So I can definitely see certain states beginning trying a secession attempt here. Brexit actually happened when Saturn and Neptune were squaring each other. So like I said, these two together really can mean like the dissolving of a government or a structure or a certain kind of leadership or something like that. Now, being that it lands on the IC of the US chart, that tells me that there's going to be major structural changes to the United States during this time frame. And by time frame, again, I mean really starting now, but taking off next spring, especially. So we'll see it more so in like 2026. And I think it'll take all the way probably until like 2030 for us to fully see this play out, because these both are going to hang around here for quite some, they're going to hang out in this sign for a little bit together. Now, what else this might mean though, could mean a few things. There's a lot of different ways to look at this, right? I could definitely see this being about the federal government in the United States really starting to pull back a lot. And it'll be really up to local communities and governments to really like pick up that slack. Put a pin in that, because I'm going to talk about it a lot when we get to the end and we talk about the age of Aquarius, because this is like the meat and potatoes of the age of Aquarius, really. Leaders, I think, are going to be seen in a new light as well. When Saturn and Neptune conjunct, a lot of times it really brings things to the surface that we didn't really fully realize. It's almost like taking the rose-colored glasses off of something, or like feeling like disillusioned by something, right? And so these two really coming together, it's going to make us look at our leaders in a different way. And across the world, that'll be true, but it'll definitely also be true in the United States. Now, remember that in one of the examples, Spain lost a lot of territory actually during a transit like this. So I think that the US will probably lose foreign footholds as well. I'm thinking obviously like Taiwan, the Middle East as well. We already talked about Uranus and how that might play a role in this. So I think for the United States, I could see almost like a collection of foreign sort of proxy wars as they lose their footing. And by the way, this truly really happened all the way back at the start of the war in Ukraine, because the war in Ukraine is actually when the United States had their Pluto return. When a country has its Pluto return, which happens every 250 years, it massively changes its power structure in some major way. So it's really interesting that the Ukraine war literally started the day that the Pluto return happened in the United States chart. So I think actually the true beginning of what's going on right now happened all the way back there. But with that said, we're going to see a continuation of that, and it's going to become more and more obvious that the U.S. is losing its ground there. Now, obviously, this has nothing to do with anything that I would want to happen or my personal opinions. I hate that I even have to preface that, but as always, my goal is to give you the straight, honest truth. This is what it means. This is what's going to happen. Not to scare anybody, but I think it's important that you all know what you're dealing with, because this is going to happen. So if you're in the United States right now and you're relying on any kind of like structure, like your kids go to school, or you're on, I don't know, Medicaid or something, or like some other, just whatever it is that you're relying on, especially if you're in the United States, be very prepared. Be very prepared for that to change, because it likely will over the next few years, okay? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean it to protect you. The age of Aquarius is going to be so imperative. Cannot stress this enough. It is imperative that you build a local group, a local society that's really going to be the bread and butter of society going forward. Think of like the age of Aquarius, which is the age of Aquarius. I'll make a separate video about, and I actually have already made videos about it a lot in the past. there's disagreement as to when the age of Aquarius truly starts, but it's very obvious that we do have a lot of Aquarius energy happening because we have Pluto going through Aquarius, and we also had the grand conjunction in 2020 that happened in Aquarius. So if you're interested in that, check out the rest of my channel. I do have other videos about the age of Aquarius. However, one of the biggest things to know about the age of Aquarius is that it's going to really change the way community is structured and the way it works. And so that's obviously what I'm speaking to here. So I think that there will be so many shifts and changes to leadership and borders and who's in charge and programs falling through that it really like local communities will be picking up that slack to try and create some sense of like stability. So that is one of the best things you can do for yourself right now is to try and be there for your neighbor. This is not the time to isolate yourself. This is the time for you to find your people, okay? And get involved in community things. This is the time to really truly try to work with other people because you're going to need it and you're all going to need each other. So this is not the time to throw each other under the bus. Okay. So that's the number one message I want to put out there is like be there for each other during this time, please. The summer is like a preview, as I said, to next spring of where I really think this will take off. I suspect that there's almost like what this really feels like is like there's a new world order that's really like shifting into place. It's like everything is rearranging and shifting into this new world order that we're going to see really take place. I actually wonder if this new world order has already been in charge in some way or influencing things in some way, because remember that Saturn and Neptune are actually showing you something that's already true, like already been happening. So for instance, everything with like P. Diddy and things like that, I think we'll see a lot more of those kind of things happen. And a lot of people that people maybe idolized or saw in a certain way, it's like, it's going to really boggle some people's minds. Like, I feel like idols are falling during this time frame over the next like few years. I've talked about that in other videos, kind of the death of celebrityhood, which is all connected to kind of the previous age that we're in the process of leaving. I think that's what we'll see there. So this level of internal reorganization of government and boundaries is likely to happen in other places as well, not just the United States. As I said earlier, this is something that's going to affect the entire world. So certain politicians we'll see maybe are asked to stand down or choose to stand down. We'll see a lot of shifts around like leadership, teachers, and structures, as I said earlier. In addition to that, and I promise we'll talk more positive near the end here. I like to start with the bad news, right? More cataclysmic events I could definitely see with these two together. Neptune represents like the ocean. Saturn represents rocks. If you think about Saturn's rings, I actually really love Saturn's rings because they're so beautiful. There are pieces in the ring that are as small as a speck of dust, and some are as large as mountains. And yet all of them are perfectly organized into this 1.5 mile wide ring that just perfectly and smoothly surrounds Saturn. And so that's really what Saturn is about, right? It's about organizing and perfecting something. And so that's why he's here. He's here to say, okay, we need to like reorganize this and we need to take a different kind of look at it. So, but with the energy of Neptune being about water, I can see issues around water as well then, because Saturn is a restrictive force to whatever it touches. So I could see water shortages, or maybe there'll be like a need to regulate water consumption. Saturn, think of Saturn like he's always going to bring like restriction and shortages and or some sort of like regulation or new structure to it. In this case, I feel like there could really be a drought caused by heat because it's in Aries. So in other words, global warming here could maybe bring issues and other weather related issues associated with that. I could also see this being about maybe issues around shipping in the ocean as well. So maybe we'll see shortages again, much like we did during COVID when Saturn was that same planet. Saturn was actually conjunct Pluto during that time. Or maybe we'll see new trade regulations. Maybe ocean waste will be a problem. I also feel like there could be more fighting in the actual sea because Aries does represent fighting. And I do think that there will be a lot of rebellion to these changes because Aries is very independent and will fight for what it believes in. And especially with Neptune being in Aries, it's like people are going to be even more deeply kind of engrossed in their beliefs. I could definitely see religious extremism as well with Neptune and Aries. I think a lot of people will be willing to do a lot of not good things in relation to their spiritual beliefs, actually, with this kind of transit. So I can see spiritual extremism on the rise as well. And that actually may lead to like a different attitude about religion because Saturn can, like I said, can restrict or regulate. So perhaps people will want to step away from religion or regulate it in a new way or something like that. I could see as a possible response to that as well. Um, but overall, I can see generally people feeling like there's a reorganization that doesn't necessarily. The age of Aquarius is better for all humanity as a whole, but it doesn't really care about individuals. Aquarius is the opposite sign of Leo. Leo is about individualism. Aquarius is the opposite of that. It's about everybody else. It's about all of society. So it's really kind of like Aquarius does have this energy of like the ends justify the means. And I think it's really important to point out that the traditional ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, one of the planets in this conjunction. And so as we move closer and closer into the age of Aquarius, don't expect this to be something that's going to look like really celebrating the individual or helping each and every person. It's not really going to be like that. It's more like there's going to be a structure that is determined to be better for the world as a whole and is implemented on the people, regardless of how you feel about it as an individual. And so, with this conjunction happening in Aries, I can see some people responding to that with like a rebellious attitude towards it or trying to prevent it from happening, which they're not going to succeed in doing. Now, Neptune also represents spirituality, like I said earlier, and Saturn does represent structure. So I could see restriction and structure really coming to that area as well. I've already touched on a couple of those. Maybe we'll see people restrict religion in certain areas. We might see almost like a war between like science and religion to some degree. On the other hand, though, I could see some people really marrying the two, science and spirituality, which actually is the answer, by the way. We'll talk about that at the end. What is the best way to use these energies? Because they are very hard to blend. But I will say that I can see a lot of people like combining spirituality and science. I even have students in my class right now who are in psychological fields, as like a psych nurse or like a therapist or something that are taking astrology and using it in their practice. So I can see something like that continuing where there's a combination of like holistic practices into general medical practices as well. So I could see that for a lot of people too. Even for astrology, I mean, astrology obviously is one of those kind of practices. It is astrology is a good example because it is really marrying the two. It's really about spirituality and science, arguably. I'm sure some people would disagree, but ancient people would really disagree with you, and that's where your science is based off, is it not? You built your science today off of what they built thousands of years ago, and the astronomy that they built thousands of years ago is tied into astrology. They did not separate the concept of astronomy and astrology back in those times. We decided to do that in recent times, actually. So just saying, if you're out there hearing this, like what? Those two aren't really this are not involved. Yes, they are. And we're going to see that reframed more and more throughout time as these two start to blend more and more. So I do see that as well. Now, Neptune and Saturn can also represent an idealized system that sounds really good, but doesn't necessarily play out well for whatever reason. So an example of that is communism. And actually, I've noticed that a lot of these Saturn and Neptune transits really seem to coincide with major events for Russia. So I actually think we could see Russia gain influence during this time. And I also feel that the Chinese economy may improve during this time. And again, how you feel about that, I don't know, but that's what it is. That's what I see. So this transit is really about revealing things to us that have actually already been crumbling or holding us back. So for example, right, the infrastructure, if there's infrastructure that hasn't been taken care of, which I've heard is true for a lot of things in the United States, like bridges and things like that. If there's infrastructure that's already not doing well, it's going to become really obvious during this time frame, especially like next year, but really even to the end of this year. When I say time frame, again, to be clear, I mean like this summer, like right now until really 2030, but especially like the 2026, really like the early part of 2026. But really that whole time frame where it's going to become really obvious that there are certain things that are sort of propped up. Like the Spanish War of Secession was like that. Like Spain was kind of propped up, right? Like appearing to be something, but it's just gilded with gold. It's like it's empty behind it. And that things like that are going to fall through and become really obvious. So I think there'll be certain infrastructure issues that we'll see prop up as well. But overall, it's meant to be like a wake up call. Okay. And this is really meant to be a wake up call so that all of us can see the gaps that need to be addressed, that need to be filled, that really should have been addressed this whole time, but we've been ignoring it, lying to ourselves, sticking our head in the sand, pretending they're not a problem. So this is true as a society as well as individuals. Okay. As individuals, this transit is going to really show you how you're getting, it's really going to show you how you're getting in your own way. Okay. So I'll get to that here at the end, but a couple other predictions that I have about this time frame is that I also think there will be restriction to certain access to things. Like perhaps this could be issues to around like healthcare, like healthcare access. I could see that with Neptune for sure. So it might be hard for some people to get to a hospital. There might be a lack of water or other resources, like I said earlier. Neptune also has to do with charities. So I think it might be revealed that some charities are actually dirty, or people may be asking themselves, like, is this charity real and stuff like that. Saturn also has to do with the elderly or the old, like older, right? It represents age basically. So I can also see this affecting maybe the elderly in different types of ways. This could maybe raise the age of retirement, or maybe some of them will lose some of the support they have, like if they're relying on like a um if they're relying on, pensions or anything like that. I could see that being maybe an issue as well during this time. So like I said earlier, this is the theme of the age of Aquarius. Crumbling system plus advanced technology is ultimately going to be about the people working together in local communities. Speaking of which, advanced technology, let's get into more of the positives here, because I do think that we're going to see a lot of just major growth in technology, because we do also have Uranus going into Gemini. We already have Pluto in Aquarius, when both of those make positive aspects to this conjunction in the beginning degrees of Aries. It's actually a sextile. So I can see this being positive in the sense that we may see a lot of inventions really take place. I actually think it's going to be like we see a lot of stuff falling through, and then there are these really awesome people who really step up and fill those gaps and come up with these like just really great innovations and inventions to try to combat these issues. So we'll see probably an increase in the use of like AI. I'm sure we'll see a new social media platform take off. Other types of inventions I can see as well. Some of those inventions might be weapons because it is in Aries, but I do think that we'll see technological advancements that better the world in general too. Whether that is through remote learning. I could also see like some sort of technology to help kind of fill the gap of like it being difficult to get healthcare. So maybe uh like a new AI system that helps diagnose people or something like that. I don't know, use your imagination. I'm sure it'll be something really interesting, but nevertheless, we will see really big advancements in those areas of life. I can also see a rise of feminism during this time as well. So I think that we may see some new female leaders take hold, or be sort of the guiding light in certain situations and areas as well. So overall, though, I would say this is really not the time to cling to old structures. If you have a structure that you have been leaning on for so long and you're starting to feel it shift, bail now, bail immediately, okay? Do not cling to it. You will prolong your suffering if you do that, because it is going to, Saturn's not going to let you get away from it. Saturn is literally the planet of karma. He's a hard taskmaster. Do not joke around about Saturn. He is not going to let you look away from what it is that is stopping you from achieving your dreams. Okay? The things that you really believe that you could do, you may have sat here for years and like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do that. And you've been probably telling yourself that for years and years and years, and it's never happened. Why? Because there is something that is holding you back that you are in your own way about. And this could be several things. One of these is clinging to a structure that is already starting to fail. You're going to go down with that ship. It's really time to forget. Forgive and forget, grieve, move on. That's really the energy of this. The people that have the hardest time with change and letting go of these old structures are the ones that are going to suffer the most. It's really time to wake up to reality here. Okay. And make the changes that you need to get what you want and get what you need. So don't ignore the gaps that start to show themselves and be like, oh, it'll probably be better next year. It won't. I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to tell you the truth because you need to make these changes. And believe it or not, this realization is actually a gift from the universe because Saturn and Neptune can make your dreams come true. Neptune is about what you really dream about and believe in, and Saturn makes shit happen. That is his thing. Say what you want about Saturn. He's Capricorn's planet, though. And Capricorn, they succeed. That is literally what they represent. Capricorn as a sign represents all the hard work it takes to get ultimate success. So you can succeed, but only if you're not running away from it. No more stagnancy, no more running away. You need to see the real truth and that which is truly holding you back. And some of those things are probably your own self. Okay. Neptune has a lot to do with the ways that we get in our own way, our own psychological hangups, our bad habits, overeating, materialism, drugs and alcohol, all the things that we do to distract ourselves from the reality of life because it just feels good. Be very cautious leaning into that feeling right now because Saturn is not going to let that happen. I'm just going to let you know that right now. The more you feel like that, take that as a sign you need to do something different because Saturn is going to come back around, bam, he's going to smack you. So I'm just telling you this because it's important that you kind of wake up from this situation because a lot of people are going to want to numb this. A lot of people are going to see what's going on and be like, I just want to deny it to myself or forget it's happening. And I don't just mean on a global scale. I mean in their individual lives as well, because obviously there'll be individual implications of all of these events, right? And that is the worst thing you could do because not only are you robbing yourself, but you're also not finding your community, which, as I said earlier, is the most important thing that you can do. So I think a lot of us are going to almost feel sort of lost over the next few years or like, oh, where do I really belong? Who am I really? I'm feeling like not at home anywhere or like just finding what's happening here is natural. This is you trying to find your place in the new world that is forming around you. It's very disorienting and it's happening very quickly. Although it takes years to do, it is still very quick in the grand scheme of things. And so I think a lot of people are going to have almost like low energy or feeling like they don't really belong anywhere. Understand that this is part of the process. This is a part of what it takes to accept this new world. And so Neptunian energy, Pisces energy has a lot to do with just acceptance and grief and letting go. So that's really the best thing that you can do for yourself. As far as the best, but on that note, the best things you can do generally when it comes to Saturn and Neptune here is trying to blend discipline with imagination. So think like meditation practices, studying, religion, yoga, all of these things are bringing a structure to something that is spiritual or creative. Maybe you have a creative talent or a creative project you want to work on. Saturn is going to say, awesome, I love your project. How do we make this work? How do we structure this? So bring some sort of structure into it. Maybe that means hiring somebody to help you with it. Maybe that means making a strong plan that you're definitely going to stick to, right? There's got to be a way. These two are very hard to work with in conjunction with each other. But if you can do that, you will find that you see progress faster than anybody else. And in addition to this, using this energy to see yourself for who you really are, flaws and all. This is a good opportunity to look at yourself in the mirror and see who you really are. What are you really about? What have you been doing? And are the things that you've been aligned with, are they really that? Is that really what you want to be like on the outside? So use this to overcome your own psychology, your own subconscious mind. Neptune represents the subconscious mind. So really look at your bad habits, your shadow self, things like that. Only the people who can be really honest with themselves about the way they sabotage their own life are gonna see progress here. But if you do that and you don't look away and you let Saturn help you fix those issues, then you will be the one who has your dreams truly come to fruition. So thank you for listening. I'm your favorite astrologer, Amber Kong, and don't forget to keep looking up.